Soon-to-be Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke to Fox News about President Trump. Let's watch.
I do think it's possible under certain terms we could get a major infrastructure bill done, but maybe even in the first 100 days. But that infrastructure bill has to have certain things for us to support it. It can't just be tax credits. There won't be enough. It has to be large and bold. Trump has talked about $1 trillion good. And we're not going to...
Federal spending.
Federal spending, exactly, not just tax expenditures. And it can't cut the basics like Medicare and education and other things to pay for it. But if he wants to do a major infrastructure bill focused on infrastructure and with those criteria, it's very possible.
Well, let's do a lightning round, quick questions, quick answers.
Sure.
On a number of items in the Trump agenda. There's been talk about a possible deal, infrastructure, which Democrats would like and some Republicans, but in return, tax reform, corporate tax, way to get some of those trillions of dollars back to this country.
Look, it's not something that I'd take off the table, and I did some negotiations with Paul Ryan about this. But to get the kind of infrastructure money that Donald Trump is talking about, then you'd have to do a lot more than international tax reform to get it done. Just doesn't bring in the dollars you need.
What about trade deals, killing some of the, renegotiating
Yes.
some of the trade deals?
These are very good questions.
Thank you.
Surprisingly, on several different issues, Donald Trump in his campaign echoed the views of Democrats, not Republicans. Massive transportation bill, trade, getting rid of the carried interest loophole, cleaning up the swamp. And on those issues where he agrees with us and the Republican establishment and hard right doesn't, we challenge him. Work with us. And keep your promises to blue-collar America. I think blue-collar America voted for Donald Trump more on Democratic issues than on Republican issues, which he professed.
Yeah, it pains me to say this, but Chuck Schumer is right. Now, there's a lot of hypocrisy in what he's saying because he's the one that argued Hillary Clinton's strategy should be to snub those workers. I mean, the quote was something like, for every blue-collar worker you lose as a voter, you gain 2 white-collar workers in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So in other words, yeah, the working man, the downtrodden, fuck them. Let's go to the upper middle class people and we'll get our votes there. So let's get moderate Republicans as opposed to people who are, working men and women, working families, even poor families. So there's a lot of hypocrisy because he specifically said snub those people. And now he's like, well, I think President Trump got elected as a result of appealing to those people. Well, that's true. He did, which is why you should have appealed to those people and you should have ran a candidate who could appeal to those people, Bernie Sanders. Anywho. So there's a lot of hypocrisy in what he's saying. Don't get me wrong, Chuck Schumer is a neoliberal disaster. He's part of the Iraq War, he was pro-torture. I mean, the list goes on of deregulation of Wall Street. I mean, this guy is kind of the quintessential neoliberal. So, and we did a story on him the other day. You can go check that out if you want to know more details. But in terms of that argument, did voters, most of the people who voted for Donald Trump, was it, oh, I love how bigoted he is? Or was it, oh, shit, he's ripping NAFTA, he's ripping TPP, he's saying he's going to look out for the working man, he wants to do an infrastructure bill, he says he's not going to cut our Social Security. I do think that was the main reason. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to overstate it in that direction either. Now, I think that's most of them voted for him because, again, he was economically pretty liberal with a lot of the shit that he said. But then there are people who, and Hillary Clinton got a lot of shit for saying this, but she was actually much more nuanced than people gave her credit for. This is a rare area where I don't think Hillary Clinton was wrong. But she said there are the basket of deplorables that also vote for Donald Trump. Look, I don't know how anybody can deny that. There are some people who, the main reason why they vote for him is because he says, let's ban 1.6 billion Muslims from coming into the country. Let's deport 11 million undocumented immigrants. Let's do nationwide stop and frisk, which, by the way, has been proven well over 90% of the time. I think over 95% of the time, it doesn't yield anything. And then of however many percentage points it is that you do yield something, how many of them are just, hey, somebody has a little bit of weed? And it's obviously used disproportionately to target minority communities. So it's like taking away the Fourth Amendment rights of minorities all across the country. So here's a guy who also ran on law and order, we're going to stop. And by the way, law and order, but he wants to pull out of the Geneva Conventions and kill families overseas. Weird kind of law and order you got there, buddy. The kind that doesn't apply to you. But so bring back stop and frisk, deport all undocumented immigrants, ban all Muslims. So here's a guy, he ran on fucking, not that he ran on it, but before he ran, he was the most prominent birther in the country. So, Obama, hinting, it just peddling nonsense to the idiots who think Obama's a Kenyan Muslim. So, yeah, there's also a strong element of bigotry in what he was saying. So some of the people voted for him. I'd say most of the people voted for him because he's economically populist, and they thought, I think he's going to look out for me, even though he's rough around the edges, and I don't think Hillary Clinton is. She's an elitist insider. But then there are some people who it's a mix. So, they like the xenophobia, but they're not outwardly xenophobic. But they're like, okay, I could live with that. And they like the economically populist message. But then there are some people who are just like, it's all about that. It's all about the hatred and the bigotry. Hillary said it's like 50-50. Maybe that's a little too harsh. I don't know what percentage of his supporters are just deplorable, but there are some scary numbers coming out of his crowd. I think 59% think Obama's foreign-born. That is a deplorable belief. It's been proven otherwise, but you're still holding on to the opposite belief. I wonder why that is. Could it be because he's got dark skin? Let me think about it. So some of them, just are deplorable. You did have the KKK, you did have neo-Nazis, white nationalists, the alt-right. These people all lined up in unison behind him, and I think it was more because of the xenophobia than because of, hey, I might look out for workers, maybe. That's my rhetoric on the campaign trail. So it's a mix, but overall I think Schumer's right that he wouldn't have won this election if most of the voters weren't voting for him because of the other stuff he was saying. They probably thought, look, I could overlook the other shit that I don't necessarily agree with, because I think he's going to look out for working people. So, interesting and rare that I'm agreeing with Chuck Schumer.